Coming up on this episode, Steph Curry returned, but it mattered little as the Warriors suffered their sixth straight loss against the Oklahoma City Thunder on Saturday. What went right, what went wrong, and what do the Warriors need to do to snap this current losing streak? Yes, welcome to the Golden State with Mates podcast on what is a Monday morning here for me. Just as a little bit of an aside before we get started, it's currently just gone 8 a.m. my time Monday morning. I've been up for a couple of hours. I am running off about 3 hours sleep, if that. I was up till about 3 o'clock watching the ICC Cricket World Cup final. Thankfully, Australia were able to beat India. In India, in the final, it was fantastic to stay up and watch it till the early hours, 3 a.m. As I said, for those of you obviously in America, not too familiar with the cricket, Australia were quite the underdogs, obviously, against the Indians, who went into the final with 10 straight wins. Absolutely unbelievable to get the win there and win our sixth World Cup trophy. But unfortunately, the same euphoria couldn't be said for the Golden State Warriors yesterday in what was their sixth straight loss to the Oklahoma City Thunder, a 130-123 defeat in overtime. This has been a disastrous period for the Warriors, and Steph Curry returned after his 2-game absence with a knee injury, but unfortunately it didn't change the end result. This was the Warriors 6-2, 6-3 as they came back to Chase Center, and a period in which we thought they could build some real momentum or continue the momentum that they had after a pretty tough road schedule to start the season, and instead things have gone absolutely pear-shaped. So obviously in an overtime loss, there are countless tens, hundreds of moments, little particular plays, which we can look back on and think, well, if this had happened or that had happened, then the result could have been different. That was no different, obviously, in Saturday's game against the Thunder, but there were 4 particular moments that I wanted to get into, which really stood out to me as I was watching it in the aftermath. And I've already wrote about this, but just to kind of reflect on the game a little bit, the Warriors not even had their chances. They should have just won the game. They were up by 18 points in the third quarter. And then obviously Andrew Wiggins' three-pointer with 1.6 seconds remaining, giving them the 3-point lead. Should have won at that stage. Chet Holmgren instead hits a turnaround three. A fantastic shot. Absolutely nailed it from the left wing to send the game to overtime, where Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was spectacular. He made 3 clutch, difficult buckets in overtime, had the block on Stephen Curry on a 3-point attempt. But the 4 pivotal moments to me in this game, you could argue that the Warriors lost this game in the third quarter. So Klay Thompson makes a turnaround banker over Cason Wallace to give them an 18-point lead with just over 6 minutes to go in the third quarter. Things looked very comfortable at that stage. In fact, those 18 minutes for the entire second quarter, which the Warriors won, I think, by 12, and then the first half of the third quarter, that was probably the best Warrior basketball we've seen since, I wanted to say maybe the Denver game, because I thought that Denver game was actually pretty good, given they were undermanned slightly. No Draymond in that game. They were coming up against the Nuggets in Denver. Like, that was hard. They got within 3 points. They played pretty well that game, but since then it's obviously been nightmarish. They battled fairly hard, I suppose, against the Timberwolves in the second game, where they were down Steph, and then Draymond and Klay got ejected within the first 2 minutes. But this was definitely the most dominant period where, they outscored the Thunder by 20 over those kind of 18 minutes. And then at that point, you just need to be steady, right? You just need to be consistent, because I think in that situation, a still very young Thunder team on the road, down 18, if you just kind of keep that lead for another 4 or 5 minutes, they might pack it up, right? They might just think to themselves, okay, we came here, we got 1 out of 2. We're probably pretty happy with that. Let's just pack it up and move on to the next one. But no, the Warriors, in kind of typical Golden State fashion, have to just get a little bit lazy, a little bit lackadaisical. And what happens is their next 3... So initially, after they had the 18-point lead, SGA makes a couple of easy layups, which is not great. But whatever, Steve takes a timeout, tries to halt whatever little momentum Shea was building there. It's okay. 14-point lead is still there. There's no time to panic. And then coming out of the timeout, the Warriors' next 3 offensive possessions, there's a Jonathan Kuminga turnover, there's a Steph Curry turnover, and there's another Kuminga turnover. 3 turnovers in a row. In a period where you just had to be stable, where you could have really just driven the Thunder into submission, and instead you took your foot off the pedal by your own actions, particularly offensively. Shea starts to get going. He has 15 points in the third quarter. All of a sudden, an 18-point lead is down to 2 at the end of the third quarter on the back of a 22-6 Thunder run. That's where the Warriors lost the game. Because as I said, if you just play solid basketball, if you just go even for the next 4 or 5 minutes, Thunder, they probably pack it up. They're a resilient young team. They showed that. But the Warriors gave them an avenue back into the game. When, as I said, some consistent basketball there, just some solid stuff without any mistakes, the Thunder probably pack up shop at that point. The next one is late in the game where there's 2 plays, obviously. The first one comes with a minute 26 left where, and this is not necessarily a Warrior thing, but just, I guess, a moment to reflect on, where SGA is fouled on the drive by Wiggs. The Warriors are up 2 at this point. And it's an unconventional looking play because on the replay, SGA clearly kicks out at Wiggs and nearly gets him in the groin region where you don't want to be hit as a male. There's people on social media kind of making jokes. Imagine if that was Draymond. Imagine the trouble he would have got to there. Now, yes, that looked unconventional, but the question mark, I suppose, was there a foul on Wiggins beforehand? The refs obviously called it on the floor. Steve Kerr went to challenge it. It was upheld. SGA goes to the line for 2 free throws. Steve, reflected on in the post game. He was pretty upset. He understood the rule, and I don't think he was having a crack at the referees. I think he was just more having a crack at the rule and how that's in place in terms of legal guarding position. And then I suppose from a lot of Warrior fans' perspective, including myself, you could look at the SGA kick out towards Wiggins' groin region and just think, like, he's getting 2 shots for this. That looked very, as I said, unconventional. Probably not appropriate. I mean, you can say what you want about it, but I do think it was a big point of the game because that gets overturned. The Warriors are up 2 with possession with 90 seconds left. Again, probably a different result. And then the last one, which is probably the most controversial one from a Warrior perspective, Wiggs hits the big 3, 1.6 seconds to go. We think, wow, okay, this is the Andrew Wiggins statement game. I'm back. I've returned. Absolutely fantastic. I was watching it and I yelled out and scared the crap out of my cats. Fantastic. And then Chet Holmgren just hits a turnaround 3 at the buzzer. And it's like, oh, okay, now I've got to go to overtime. And at that point, you think that, okay, this is going to be a struggle because the Thunder have the momentum. The life that Andrew Wiggins had brought to the building has simply evaporated on the back of that shot. So the question mark is, should they have fouled on the catch there from Chet Holmgren, sent him to the line for 2 free throws, and at the end of the day, like, they foul him there with 1.2 left. He makes 2 free throws. The Thunder foul with, it's going to be very difficult for them in that situation. Now, Steve said after the game, I think Wiggs backed this up as well, that 1.6 seconds remaining, they want to have a catch and shoot attempt to try and foul in that scenario is a very risky business because the refs obviously know they want a catch and shoot attempt. And so risking giving up a 3-point shooting foul in that scenario might not be worth doing, obviously, and might not be worth trying to foul in that scenario. I think it's very easy in the aftermath after Chet made the shot to be like, why didn't you foul and get really frustrated with it? I'm on the fence a little bit because I agree with those that are frustrated. I also agree with Steve in a sense, and this is kind of his general philosophy when there's so little time on the clock left. So that's just how he does it, and I understand it. But I do also think there was the chance to foul. Like if you look at, and again, it's very easy to say in the slow mo. It's very uh, easy to say on a still picture. But Chet catches the ball with his back to the basket. I just think if Wiggs pushes him out of bounds in that scenario and fouls him, I would have been surprised if the refs thought, "Well, he's back to the basket. That's a shooting foul." I think you would have had to, again, maybe it doesn't come off, and maybe he actually kind of turns in the air as if he's going to shoot the ball, and the refs see that and do give him a 3-point shooting foul. Chet's 91% on the season from the free throw line. So, again, not the guy you want to be sending to the free throw line for 3 shots. But I do think, and again, very easy to say in the aftermath, I do think there was an opportunity to foul there. And so, if anything, I'm on the side of fans and analysts that are frustrated that they didn't foul in that scenario, because I think they could have. Different, if they're facing, whoever catches the ball, if it's Chet or whoever else, if they are facing the basket in that scenario, then yes. And the other thing you don't want to do is give up a 4-point play where you're thinking, oh, I'll just touch foul them. And then all of a sudden they're actually making the basket as well and potentially, giving them the lead in that scenario. So I can see both sides of the equation. I'm sitting more in that scenario. I'm sitting more on the frustration of not fouling, because I do think on the catch, facing away from the basket, there was a chance to foul him and get away with only sending him to the line for 2 free throws. So that was clearly the most controversial player in the game. And then the final one, which I just wanted to mention, and I don't want to, Klay Thompson is my favorite player ever, but the play early in overtime where his shot selection was just abysmal, a disaster. You just cannot, I don't know what he was thinking. So basically, he tries a leaning wing 3 over a heavily contested, or Lou Dort, heavily contested shot over Lou Dort, and misses it badly, to the point where Loon is able to track down the offensive rebound. He kicks it back out to Steph. Steph drives and then does a behind-the-back pass to Klay, who is in the corner. And then he's slightly, ever so slightly open, but he chooses to pump fake on the first, and then he goes up with it after the pump fake, and then doesn't even draw iron, and it's an air ball. And just that possession in overtime, where every possession is critical. You are trying to get a score, obviously, on every possession. You're trying to get a stop. You're trying to execute to the very best of your ability in an incredibly close game, in an incredibly important game when you've lost 5 straight games. And you're taking 2 of the toughest shots with time still left. I'd have to go back and check, but I think the leaning wing 3 over Dort, I think there was still time on the shot clock there. And I know for a fact there would have at least been 6 or 7, maybe 8 seconds on that corner 3 as well. And I thought Klay's shot selection in the first half was really good, but the fourth quarter and that possession, particularly in overtime, that's the stuff that he needs to cut out right now, because we know he's not in the kind of form where he's going to hit those shots. And if you're a Warrior fan and you're looking at that, a guy that's shooting poorly on the season, who's averaging 13, 14 points a game, who's well below his best, there's question marks. Everyone's saying he's washed up. I'm not going to that point just yet, but that's the kind of stuff that if you're Klay Thompson, you need to cut out, because you're basically just giving ammunition to the haters, essentially. And I don't want to be one of them. I don't classify myself as one of them. I love Klay Thompson, but that does kind of need to be identified as a what are you doing moment, essentially. Let's get on to a positive, though. I will talk more about Klay in a second. But Andrew Wiggins. So disappointing that this was Andrew Wiggins' back game. The Warriors, through Wiggins, have snapped their losing streak. Let's get on to the season now, essentially. But no, obviously Chet had other ideas. Shea had other ideas in overtime. But it shouldn't disturb the fact that Andrew Wiggins had a major bounce-back game. He entered the game, a few things here for you. So his season high going into the game was 17 points. He'd made 2 of his 21 three-point attempts in 24 quarters at Chase Center this season, entering the game. So he nearly doubles his season best in this one. He has 31 points. He shoots 12 of 19 from the floor, 5 of 8 from three-point range. And then in the last 6 minutes of the fourth quarter, where the game was really slipping away from the Warriors, so they led by 18, the Thunder came bursting back. And then the Thunder led by 6 with just over 5 minutes remaining, and we thought, oh, geez, this is going to be tough for the Warriors now, having, blown that lead to be able to come back from a 6-point deficit and win it. And it was Andrew Wiggins at the end of the day who was the one who, put his foot down and said, we're not going to lose this game. Unfortunately, that didn't turn out to be the case. But again, it shouldn't take away from the fact that he had 4 threes in the last 6 minutes, basically, of the game, and should have won the Warriors the game if they had just, again, fouled Chet on that final possession or done a ton of other things, whatever. But the 31 points, it's one game, and I think fans will point to the fact, well, okay, it's one game out of 14. We didn't actually win the game, so what does it really matter? I'd like to take more of an optimistic perspective of, at the very least, that was a sign that he still has that, right? And this is the thing, is that I think a lot of people looked at this stretch from Andrew Wiggins to start the season and may have just thought, well, he's never going to be that guy again. He's never going to be a guy that can go out and get you 30. Well, he did, and he proved that. Now, it's up to him now to prove to himself, his teammates, his coaches, and probably most importantly, the fans, that he can do it on a regular basis, that he can rediscover the kind of scoring ability that can have him as a 20-plus point per game scorer, as that secondary scorer next to Steph, because obviously that's been missing so far this season. It's been a huge issue for Golden State. But just to see him happy at moments during the game, finding his confidence again. He said in the aftermath that he never lost confidence in his shot. I call BS on that. I mean, he shot 13.5% going into yesterday's game on threes this season. 13.5%. Anyone would lose confidence shooting that number. I don't care who you are. So I call BS on that, but it doesn't matter regardless. It doesn't matter. What matters now is obviously trying to replicate those performances. And no one's expecting him to go out and have 31 every night, but he needs to obviously be able to make a few more threes. As I said, 2 threes on 21 attempts in 24 quarters entering that game. Just needs to try and get back to at least league average, like 35%. We're talking about a guy that was nearly 40% on 6.1 attempts last season. Like, he became not just a good 3-point shooter, but a really, really good 3-point shooter. And it was great last night to see a few go in for him. I thought it was a nice building block game where he kind of started inside. I think his first bucket came on a little floater flip shot over an outstretched Chet Holmgren 3 or 4 minutes into the game, which was actually a tough shot. Nice of that to go in. I think 40 seconds later he had a cutting layup. Just got an easy one, which is, again, I've kind of been making a point with him and Kuminga. Can we just get them some easy shots rather than everything seeming so hard? So you got an easy layup at the rim. And then the two that I think really got him going with the back-to-back mid-range jumpers in the second quarter, where I think it was Loon came up and set a screen. Wiggs bounced off the dribble, got to his spot just above the free throw line and nailed 2 in a row. And I think at that point you thought, okay, this is better. He's knocked down 2 jumpers in a row, and I couldn't recall the last time that had happened all season. So that was kind of the start of it. 12 points on efficient scoring in the first half, added another 6 in the third quarter. And then, of course, explodes for the 13 points in the fourth quarter. The 4 threes, missed one of his free throws, which continues to be a struggle. We don't need to talk about that. It's just is what it is at this point. It's incredibly frustrating, but whatever. 0 points in OT. That was slightly disappointing. Missed his couple of attempts there, but still, again, it shouldn't just distract from the fact that it was a very positive Andrew Wiggins game. And just a reminder to himself first and foremost, but also everyone else, that he's still got this in his game. He can still go out and make 5 or 6 threes, he can still go out and have 25, 30 plus points and be a very impactful two-way player. I thought his defense on Shea in the first half was also excellent. Shea made some shots, obviously. In the second half, he ended up with 40 and won them the game. But I'm not too critical of Wiggs in that point. Like some of the shots Shea was making, particularly in overtime, was just, I mean, Wiggs couldn't have done anything more. So a really positive Andrew Wiggins game. And I think that's something that the Warriors can certainly take with them. Obviously, going to the Rockets matchup on Monday. A few other things here. I just want to get back to Clay for a second. Clay might just need to be banned from taking more than 4 dribbles on any possession. I'm sorry. It might just have to be the case because whenever he puts the ball on the floor, it's generally a disaster. Like, he creates no separation whatsoever. And so usually, if he ends up shooting the ball, it's a very tough contested shot, which has essentially got no hope of going in. Other times, he can lose the ball on the dribble. I think he had 4 turnovers yesterday, and a lot of them just came, he just lost the ball. The off the dribble stuff and execution is it's horrific. What I saw in the first half was really good. He he made 3 of his 4 threes, and they were all catch and shoot attempts. He had one wide open on the left wing. He had another, that was in the first quarter. He had another one, I think, left wing, second quarter, and then straight after that was above the break. Pretty deep 3 that he cashed. I think, and I tweeted about this yesterday, I think he's still a great catch and shoot player. He's never going to lose the ability to shoot the ball off the catch. I need him to prioritize that rather than adding some of the other BS. There was a play yesterday where he put the ball on the floor. JK was wide open under the rim for a dunk, and he just didn't see him, and instead he turned the ball over to Jalen Williams, who went down the other end for a dunk. And that was a classic 4-point turnaround where you're just I don't see, you need to see that. I'm sorry, you're a starting caliber, getting paid $40+ million. You need to see that play. You need to hit Kuminga, and you need to get a dunk, and then you get to set up your half-court defense. Instead, you turn it over, and the Thunder go the other way. And again, young team on the road, that's the kind of stuff that gets them going. So some of the off-the-dribble stuff is very frustrating. I still think he can be a very efficient catch-and-shoot player. I think that would mean he'll probably take less shot attempts, and you need to find more scoring elsewhere because there is just something with him athletically and physically that's not there anymore. It's surprising to me because everything we heard during the offseason was he's another year removed, he's more time removed from the 2 injuries. He's been able to play during the offseason. He's been able to have a full training camp and preseason, all the things he wasn't able to do after the championship in 2022. And there's a lot of optimism around Klay Thompson that he could be better than last season. And last season, he was 21.9 points per game on 41.2% three-point shooting. Imagine, the Warriors would love that right now, just to return to last season's form. It doesn't need to be anything better than that. Just a return to that would be extraordinary. And there just seems to be something physically where, and again, it's surprising because he is another period removed from the 2 major injuries. But he looked way better physically last season, I thought. And this season, he just can't get open like he used to. And I've been on this point for, 14 games now, essentially, the whole season. He just doesn't get the separation running off screens and everything else like he used to. Maybe it's not just him. Maybe it's the Warriors not putting him in position to get those open looks like he used to. But his shot attempts are down this season. They might need to go down a little bit more for him to be truly effective, just because he should be taking more catch and shoot attempts. Teams are going to close out on him, yes. But I wouldn't, if teams close out on him, it's all right, pump fake, maybe 2 or 3 dribbles, and then either pull up for a mid-range or make the next pass. You do not want, he shouldn't be running any pick and rolls as the ball handler. He just flat out shouldn't be. I'm sorry, it just doesn't look good. And as I said, Klay Thompson, I've got a bloody cat named after him. I love that guy. But some of the stuff off the dribble is very ugly right now. And the catch and shoot stuff is still going to be elite. the catch and shoot stuff could still warrant him getting $20 million a season. But there's something physically that's amiss there that, I don't think it's an injury or anything like that. I just think he's not quite, he's just had 2 major leg injuries. Of course, he's going to be not quite, 33 years of age. He's not going to be quite as quick, move quite as well laterally as he once did. That's not surprising. What is a little surprising is the fact that it's come very quickly after last season, where he actually looked quite good for a lot of the season. Yes, he started slow, he ended slow, but January, February period, the middle of the season, he was really, really good. January, February was the 2 best scoring months of his career. Now, can he get it back? Yes, maybe. But again, I have my doubts just because physically, athletically, something doesn't seem right. And at this age, I just wonder whether he can get that back or not. Anyway, question just on the starting lineup, because when it came through yesterday, so Chris Paul starting, obviously Steph back. So Steph, CP, Clay, Wiggs, Loon, the kind of starting lineup they had for the first couple of games of the season where Draymond was out. It surprised me a little bit. So Kuminga had 21 points, obviously in the first matchup against the Thunder, pretty efficiently. Had another efficient 13 points yesterday. Obviously, they want CP out there for his playmaking, I think, first and foremost. Obviously, just the veteran IQ leadership that he can provide. Just the general know-how, I suppose, on offense. And if you've got Kuminga in there over him, then there's probably a little bit of lack of playmaking around Steph. You got to be very wary of not pushing Steph too hard, because he plays, given the overtime, he plays 40 minutes yesterday after being out injured for a couple of games with that knee injury. So you've got to be very careful. Some of the stuff I saw in overtime, I think, was really poor, where Steph was kind of, and you never see this with Steph, I don't know if he was just knackered or what it was, but there's a couple of possessions there in overtime where he was just standing still and didn't even see the ball, didn't even get anywhere near the ball, didn't even really want the ball. And it was kind of ran through Chris Paul. And I get that. That's why Chris Paul's here, to kind of take the burden a little bit off Steph Curry. But I still think there could be an opportunity where you could go back to Kuminga in the starting lineup. You've got a little bit more scoring out there. And you run the majority of stuff through Steph. And then maybe you go to a Kuminga post-up once in a while. And you try and run some split action off him, where he's going to be so much more dynamic in that scenario than Draymond and Loon. Yes, he's not the passer of those guys, but we saw he made a nice pass out to Pajemski when he got double-teamed in the third quarter yesterday, and Pods knocked down the 3. He can make reads out of that, I think. And he's also got the dynamic, the ability that Green and Loon don't have of, okay, you expect me to pass, I'm going to spin off you, I'm going to get to the rim, and I'm going to make a layup or make a dunk or get fouled and go to the free throw line, whatever. He's got the scoring capacity. So I do wonder about that. I'm actually less emphatic on the argument that Kuminga needs to start over CP3 than what I probably was before the game yesterday, because I do understand the whole, Steph's coming back off injury, you need to lessen his burden, you need the playmaking with Drain on it. I understand why Chris is starting. I'm probably in the camp that I'd like JK to start, but maybe that's just, I'd like JK to play more, and that's a way in which to do it. And I want to see his growth, because I think for this team to be any good this season, they need him to probably become their third best scorer at a minimum, if not second. One of their top 5 players, probably, if they're going to really do anything this season. So I think Steve needs to put a little bit more trust in JK and Moody. But yeah, I mean, I'm not distraught if he continues while Dre's got 3 more games. I'm not distraught if CP keeps starting over JK, but I'm probably on the JK side of things. Again, I'm not emphatic about it, like I probably was when I first read it yesterday and I saw them going back to CP3 or Steph coming in, I suppose, for JK. I thought, I don't like that at all. I hate that. I'm a little bit less emphatic about it now. Just in terms of some of the young guys, though, so they have a GP2 obviously out yesterday as well with his foot sprain. JK and Moody, Moody plays 18 minutes, JK plays 19 minutes, Pods plays 25. I'd love to ask JK and Moody what their thoughts are on this, 20-year-old rookie, 19th overall pick coming in and essentially not taking their place because they're still in the rotation, but now playing more than them in the rotation. It's an interesting one. I'd be a little bit frustrated if I was JK and Moody because I just wonder, I think Moody and Kuminga are still better players than Pods at this point. That's no surprise. They should be their third-year players compared to a guy that played 10 games in the NBA. I can also see Steve's point of view. I think he likes another ball handler out there to supplement Steph or CP. He likes to have two ball handlers out there at the one time. And it's, I think Draymond can play that role when obviously he's there. But if he's not there, then Pods comes into the mix and he wants two of Pods, Steph, and CP on the floor at basically all times, which means Pods is going to play at least 20, 25 minutes. So I understand it. He probably doesn't make errors. He definitely doesn't make errors like Kuminga does. And he probably is a more steady point of attack defender than Moody is, which with GP2 out, the Warriors could do with. So I get it, but it still doesn't change the fact that if I was Kuminga and Moody, I'd be looking around thinking, really? Third-year players, third-year lottery picks, and now we've got this 19th overall pick coming in, playing 25 minutes. I don't know. Just an interesting little dynamic there, I think, to watch. Now, JK and Moody were okay yesterday. Kuminga, again, his supplementary scoring was good. But again, he had 21 points against the Thunder in the first matchup at Chase. And you might have expected he would have played more based on that and based on what he did in the first half. So, again, more of a watch going forward. The disappointing one for me was with Draymond out, I thought this was an opportunity for Trayce Jackson-Davis. He didn't get it in the first matchup. Then he goes and plays in the G League for Santa Cruz. They get the win behind Guy Santos' 29 points, 27 from Lester Quinones. Jackson-Davis has 11 points, 10 rebounds, I think, 4 block shots as well, which is just what he does. And then I look yesterday before the game, and he's out with a sore leg. Doesn't seem like anything serious, but just disappointing because then you look at the box score, a game that goes to overtime. Looney plays 35 minutes. There's no world in which Kevon Looney, even with Draymond Green out, there's just no world in which he should be playing 35 minutes, if you ask me. Now, he was forced to yesterday because TJD was out. But I can guarantee you if TJD was available last night, I think Steve goes 10 deep, and I think TJD goes and plays 8 to 10 minutes at least. So that's very disappointing. Loon played okay, by the way. 16 boards, 7 of which offensive. He had that obviously big offensive rebound, which led to the Wiggs 3 with 1.6 seconds left. He played okay. He also had a missed layup. I think that was with 5-6 minutes to go, whatever it was. He had that missed layup, which then Shea hit a 3 over him on the other end, and I was like, oh. It was it maybe wasn't an open layup by any means. It was semi-contested, but it's a shot he should have made 99% of the time. And then to miss that and then go down and have a 3 hit on his head on the other end, that was almost a dagger to me. And it was pretty good effort by the Warriors to actually come back and be in a position where they should have won, obviously, with that Wiggs 3 in the end. That Loon contributed greatly to, and his offensive rebounding, his rebounding in general continues to be very good. I just think that TJD can give you something different, something that should be utilized in the way of interior shot blocking and a vertical spacing threat on the offensive end. Especially with Dario Saric is now 32.8% on the season from 3, which by Warriors standards is okay. But by league standards, it's below average. So, again, do I think he should be playing 20 minutes every game? Probably not. And again, there's maybe an opportunity to get TJD some minutes there, especially if he's going to be active over these next 3 games with Draymond out. I think he needs to play, and I've said that repeatedly. Just quickly on Steph's return, 25 points, another 4 or 5 threes, whatever it was. Shot only 8 of 21. There's something wrong with his finishing at the moment. I'm not sure what it is. I'm not sure if he's kind of protecting a little bit of an injury or something. But he's missing some shots at the rim, which he would make a lot of the majority of the time. Like, we go back to the one in Denver, which seems like an eternity ago now, where he has that left-handed layup as he blew by KCP. Fairly open left-hand layup at the rim, missed that. Okay, whatever. But he had a couple last night where you just thought he makes those, like, they're layups at the rim. And so he's shooting 56.3% within 10 feet so far this season, which is not horrific, but it's down on his usually he's above 60%. Last season, I think he was at 63%. So he's basically 7-8% down on shots within 10 feet. I don't think it's a concern like someone making it out to be. I think it's more so they're coming at really crucial times. Like, he's missing some clutch ones, I suppose, that he would usually make around the rim. He's also made his fair share, don't get me wrong. But that's something that has been not prevalent, but noticeable is what I would say over the start of this season. He's just missing some shots around the rim. And, I mean, he's shooting 44.7% from three-point range so far this season. Absolutely insane. I think he went 5 of 11 yesterday. And then he's 47% from the floor overall. So he's almost shooting better from 3 than he is within the 3-point arc. So, again, just something to monitor moving forward. Just Steph's finishing, especially now that he's coming off the knee injury. Again, hopefully it's not a case of where he's trying to protect himself and he's not going up or not trying to go through contact like he otherwise would without any kind of injury. But it's a long season. You're always going to pick up little issues here and there from an injury standpoint. And fingers crossed, obviously, is the Warriors' best and by far and away most important player. Hopefully it's not a significant thing for him. And I thought he was still good enough on Saturday against the Thunder to not be too concerned about that injury going forward. I was concerned about the fact he played 40 minutes. That's a worry. But aside from that, I thought he played well enough to think that he's the usual Steph Curry who can still be a top 10 player in the league, who at the very minimum probably a top 5 player in the league. And if you are that caliber of player, your team shouldn't be missing the playoffs. So I'm not hitting the panic buttons just yet like a lot of fans are. I like to think I'm an eternal optimist. I'm someone who looks at the record at 6-8 right now and thinks, well, they're on a 6-game losing streak. What if they just have a 6-game winning streak right now? Okay, cool. They would be 12-8, and you would more than take that. Now, that's very simplistic. They're probably not going to get a 6-game winning streak right now. In fact, winning one game in general seems like a very hard and arduous task for this team, which is not good. Like that game yesterday, you're watching, it's like, can we just get a comfortable win? And then it looked like it when they led by 18 in the third quarter, and yet it doesn't happen. And they go to overtime and they end up losing. So it's looking difficult to just get one win at the moment, but I don't think it's panic stations just yet. Draymond being out hurts. I actually haven't even given my thoughts on it. I haven't even done a podcast since then. I had a bit going on the last week. So just in regard, I suppose, to the Draymond incident, I think it was probably about fair. I think Steve came to his senses, I suppose, afterwards in saying that it was probably deserved and that, Draymond went a little bit over the top. Obviously, initially after the game, he was basically just stated that, he was told or seen or saw that, Rudy had his hands on Clay, so that's why Draymond came in. And I have no issues with Draymond going in that scenario, but as Steve said, I think he just went a bit OTT with it. Provided plenty of banter on social media and and content there. But ultimately for the Warriors, they need Draymond Green on the floor. I still think he's probably their second most consistent player at the very least, and you can make the argument, well, he was their second best player last season. I think his start to this season's actually been pretty good. They just need him on the floor, and not having him on the floor, this team doesn't have the room for error like they might have done previously, where they can, forego his absence and still have, a positive, win-loss record. They just can't at the moment. They need every player on deck, and particularly when it's, still a top 3 player on the team. So very disappointing in that regard. Houston coming up, which is, the Rockets are no longer, they lost to the Clippers the other day, but they are no longer a rebuilding team that you can just pencil in a win. Like the Golden State, as I just said, there's no easy wins at the moment, and everything seems like a major challenge, and I don't think the Rockets are going to be very different. Like, they are going to bring the fight. They brought the fight, obviously, in that game at Toyota Center a couple of weeks ago, where Steph eventually got the Warriors over the line with that late barrage in the fourth quarter. But this is going to be a major challenge, and we'll just wait and see if the Warriors are up to it, because, wow, they need a win. Like, this 6-game losing streak, I think it's the biggest losing streak. It's definitely, I think, the biggest losing streak since the 2019-20 disastrous season, where they obviously had the worst record in the league. But that was obviously Clay out injured, Steph out injured. It's been a nightmare over the last 6 games or so, when it looked, positive. It looked optimistic. You're going home on this 8 of 10 game schedule, at Chase Center, and instead it's turned pear shape, as I said before. So other than that, guys, we'll do a podcast probably on Tuesday American time, Wednesday my time, kind of reviewing the Rockets game. Hopefully it's a win. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel already, please do that. You can follow us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you've got any comments at all, leave them in the comments section on YouTube, or you can tweet me at POK252. That's POK252. Thank you to everyone that has made it through to this point of the episode. I greatly appreciate it, and enjoy your week ahead.